Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. I would like to give you a bit of information on how to fill in the data regarding unintentional POPs in the new reporting format. However, I must stress that much more and more detailed information on issues related to this you will find in the updated version of the toolkit, which has been presented at the 6th meeting and of the Conference of the Parties to the Stockholm Convention. And this toolkit, its electronic version and also PDFs can be found on our web page. So in case you will be not very clear and still need some further explanation, please go into this interactive electronic version, and I'm sure you will find enough explanation there. So I would mainly like to draw your attention to the critical issues which are related to reporting of unintentional POPs. I will say a few words about the terminology and newly introduced terms such as reference year and also revision and updating of source inventories and release estimates. Also say a few words about reporting trends in releases over time, which of course requires that we maintain inventories that are coherent over time, and also report consistent results over time. And I will also touch very shortly on reporting of releases of other POPs than dioxins and furans. So in front of you, you'll see now the page of the reporting format, which is Part B, Section 4, which is related to reporting on unintentional POPs relevant to Article 5 and Annex C of the Convention. And now, as the previous presentation explained to you, in this version of the reporting format, we have been also migrating data which parties already reported in their second reports. Most of the parties reported already inventories of dioxins and furans, and those we will consider as the baseline inventory. This will be the first inventory of sources and releases of chemicals listed in Annex C, which have been developed usually as part of the National Implementation Plan, and this inventory will serve as a baseline against which subsequent updated release estimates will be assessed so that we can establish trends in releases over time. Another very important information in this regard is the reference year. The reference year is the year in which the unintentionally releases occurred. So it's not necessarily the year in which the inventory has been calculated. It is the year from which the data used to calculate the inventories are originating. That means the activity data which have been collected are referring to the reference year. In this page, this is the page where you will be entering the data in the reporting format. It is very important that you ensure that the selected year as reference year corresponds to the reference year for which you have calculated the releases. And this is how the year can be selected, and then you have to scroll to the appropriate year to input your release data. As you see, the left-hand side of the table contains the known categories of sources. So even when the toolkit has been updated, we were trying to maintain as much consistency as possible. It doesn't move. Oh, okay. Now I will show you a quite complex graphic which is trying to explain the issue of updating of and revising the inventories. I would also like to draw your attention to the fact, can you switch on the light? To the fact that this graph is also contained in the section 3.2 of the toolkit, and in the interactive version you will find a beautiful voice over the graphic which will explain to you probably much nicer these issues in more detail, as I will also try to do right now. So what means updating of the inventory? So in the first step, we will have to review the previous or the first emission inventory which has been prepared, and this is because we have to see what approach has been used to classify the sources, and also which information has been used to calculate or estimate the activity rates, and of course what assumptions and expert judgment was applied to fill the gap. This is of course very important, because if you want to calculate the updates of the inventories, the methodology should remain the same so that the consistency of the inventory is maintained. So in a second step, the first thing to do is to review changes in data which occurred in the period between the two inventories. Now, the major factors which could influence changes in releases over time are, for example, economic or demographic growth, changes in technologies, in particular through phasing in BAT and BEP, building or reconstruction or even close down of production facilities, substitution of fuels, introduction of abatement techniques such as filters, for example, and also identification of new sources and many other. This is not an exhaustive list, of course, but these are basically the major possible changes or factors to influence. Then an important step would be to check the methodology. In our case, it's usually the toolkit, whether the technology has not been updated in the meantime. And of course, as you know, on request of the parties, the toolkit has been updated and the new version is now available on the web page. And in fact, there have been also some changes in emission factors which should be then reflected in the new inventories. It is also important to classify the sources again, and in some cases where changes in the technologies occurred, it might be necessary to reclassify the source according to changes which occurred in the meantime. And finally, activity rates referring to the particular reference year for which the inventory is done have to be established. Now, while you do this examination of the initial inventory and the review of changes which occurred in the period in between, it might be that need to review or the need to revise or recalculate the initial inventory will become clear. Revising previous inventories so that new or revised emission factors and new source categories and classes are incorporated is in particular important. The factors triggering the need to revise the inventory, besides the changes in the toolkit methodology, maybe also that some specific national emission factors will trigger the need for revision, which would be, for example, related to the availability at the country level of new or corrected information and knowledge. This can be, for example, correction of past activity estimates or the discovery of sources that existed already in the past, but were not included in the initial inventory due to the lack of adequate information at that time. The revision of the previous inventories aims to correct the estimates therein by including the missing information, filling the gaps, using the same set of emission factors and applying the same emission assumptions and expert judgments as in the updated inventory. Only after all these considerations have been done, we can move to the third stage, and this is calculating the releases for the new reference year, which would be the updated inventory of dioxins and furans for a particular country. As I mentioned, please look in the toolkit for more details and also for examples why this process is very important, because only when we go through all these steps, we can establish consistent trends in the time. Now, with regards to the information sources, as I mentioned, most countries used as information source for their initial inventory, which is considered the baseline inventory, the toolkit edition from 2005. Now, since we have a new version available now, everybody should use this new version to develop the updated inventory and also to revise the previous inventory. When you have been already reporting the previous inventory or the baseline inventory in the second reporting cycle, you will have the opportunity to correct these numbers according to the revisions which should be done. And only when this happens, we will be able to compare between the baseline inventory and the updated inventory. The reporting format will guide you through this process, and as I said, more details can be also found in the toolkit itself. Now, the last issue I would like to say a few words about is reporting of other releases than dioxins and furans. In the updated version of the toolkit, we have also included emission factors for PCBs, polyfluorinated biphenyls, and also some factors for pentachlorobenzene and hexachlorobenzene. However, it is very important to acknowledge the fact that dioxin and furan formation is accompanied by releases of other unintentional POPs, and those releases can be minimized or eliminated by the same measures used to minimize or eliminate dioxins and furans. Therefore, parties do not need to compile and report full inventories of other POPs, such as, for example, HCB, PCB, and PECB. It is recommended for practical reasons that the inventory activities are focusing on dioxins and furans, as these substances are indicative of the presence of other unintentional POPs. They are considered to constitute a sufficient basis for identifying and prioritizing sources of all unintentionally produced POPs relevant to Annex C, and for evaluating the efficacy of any measures taken to minimize those releases. Again, more details are available in the Toolkit section 1.1, Conclusions, and also in the conclusions and recommendations of the Toolkit expert group, which is contained in Annex to Decision SC6/9. So this is basically all from my side, and I'm repeating again that this presentation was mainly drawing your attention to the critical moments of reporting of the releases of unintentional POPs, but much more details, including nice examples. What would it mean when inconsistent emissions are reported? Are contained in the interactive toolkit version, which you can find on our webpage. Thank you very much for your attention.